Aerie is just a compilation of a bunch of stories that I've published between 2000 and 2015, I believe. So a lot of them are old, and yeah, I'm just putting them all together so that Bermuda can be aware of them, because they're kind of all over the place, all over the world.
Okay. All right. What inspired you to become an author, and what led you to publish your new book?
I don't know if I ever thought of myself as being an author. It was just a hobby. You know, it's a drive. You can't make it go away. It's like food, or, you know, it's just something that you need. And so this is just the point I'm at. I mean, it's been my life's work.
Okay, and what led you to publish?
I compiled everything together, and I was just tinkering around, and actually that's like my 6th draft. And I had no time stamp for when I was going to have it finished or anything like that. I just, yeah, I just came to the decision that this is it, and wherever it stands, let it go.
I know you took a class with Angela Barry. Did she sort of help you or guide you or give you that extra push that you needed, or was there anything about that class that sort of propelled you to do this?
Not really.
Not really. Okay.
It's always extra knowledge. I mean, having classes, you get, it just builds up on your knowledge.
Did you learn about other Bermudan literature and like, well, I can do
Yeah.
that. I could do this, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. By day or librarian, which came first? Writer then librarian, or librarian then writer?
Definitely writer. I've been writing since the 90s, since high school. And it started with poetry, and then it kind of, the poems got longer and longer, and they became stories, and that's the evolution of it.
Okay. All right. With various genres of literature, what do you lean more towards?
This is the 4th genre, which is the most ticklish one. People get in a lot of trouble, so when I actually tell people to buy the book, I tell them not to take it too seriously, because there are times and dates and names and situations that are turned around. It's just meant to be entertaining, and if someone tells me that they had a good laugh from reading my book, then that is all I need. So.
Okay. All right. What advice would you give to upcoming authors?
I would say keep on writing the first draft. You have to get beyond the first draft. I do a lot of editing. I cut whole paragraphs that I'm in love with, and I think I probably go through like 12 drafts before I'm satisfied with something.
Okay.
So it's a lot of work, and the submission process is just as tedious. If you're trying to submit outside of Bermuda, you have to keep on going, keep on studying, and stay on it, and don't worry about the rejections, because that's what takes you there, and it develops your writing.
Okay. Lee-Ann, can you just build on and explain to us more about the 4th genre?
The 4th genre has been around for hundreds of years, but it's only been really, really prevalent now because it's dealing with the individual and the personal narrative and the memoir. So it's that area of writing, and what? And it's a little bit ticklish because you are talking about, you know, family situations and personal situations, and you have to be kind of cognizant of how your story comes across to either the people in the story or your audience, because it can be taken the wrong way.
Okay. Can you talk to us more about the challenges of writing? Do you have any challenges?
That was the challenge. I had a story called Postcards from the Devil's Isles, which was based on Bermuda postcards and talked about culture, Bermuda culture, and events in Bermuda. And in the first segment, I talked about a friend of mine who's Canadian, who's very wacky. And when the story was published in a small journal, she read about it and was really offended because she didn't realize that people viewed her in the way that I had spoken about her. I thought she was just wacky and off the wall, and people really couldn't take her because Bermudians are so laid back, and you know, she was completely different being Canadian. And she just didn't realize, I think we were 14 or 13 at the time. She didn't realize she came across like that. So when she read about herself, she was upset, but she realized I was talking about her in a best friend context, and I was kind of using what's the term? Juxtaposition to actually show, you know, our friendship.
Okay. All right. And can you explain what it was like as far as the process of publishing? Give us a little bit, you know, talk to us more about that.
Small press publishing and university publishing, you don't really get money for. I never really dealt with contests. I would just keep submitting to small press submission, calls for submission. And I think out of all of the pieces that I sent out, maybe 500, only 12 out of those 500 were accepted. So it's a long process. You have to really be dedicated to it and schedule yourself. And as far as doing it in Bermuda, there's just no venue, no range for it. So that's why you kind of have to do it outside of Bermuda. And as far as pulling it all together in a book, it was just nearly impossible to find. The publishing criteria is so limited. You have to be between this age and have to be writing about this and that. And it was very difficult to find a publisher that met my criteria, being that I'm kind of in the Caribbean, but not, but, you know, like the Caribbean. So publishers were kind of, you know, turning it down my manuscript. And even I did try Peepal Tree Press years ago, and at the time I didn't have enough stories to make. They said it was a few stories short of a whole book. So now I'm at the point where I have the number of pages that they were requiring. But I decided to self-publish anyway. So.
Talk to us more about the self-publishing platform.
So I just used CreateSpace with Amazon, and actually I was on the telephone with an agent years ago, but I just was doing this whole, you know, whenever I get to it bit, I wasn't setting a deadline like I said. And so I didn't use the editing services, and because most of the stories were already accepted by other presses, I just used them as they were. And CreateSpace is part of the Amazon publishing platform, so that's what I used. And they do advise you on formatting and certain things like that, you know, your cover and all that, but you do have to pay for the editing services. So I really it didn't come to a great expense for me to publish the book.
Can you tell us about your history of libraries? Did you use libraries a lot growing up?
I was here just about every day after school checking out the largest books that I could find, the large print picture books or whatever. And and as far as Bermuda College Library, I was there a lot as well when they first opened. So I spent a lot of time in libraries. And I didn't know anything about the youth library because I was all about Stephen King. So when I started coming here, so I was checking out all the Stephen King books.
Tell us what's next for you.
I've been sitting on a few projects for a while, and I have 2 other books. One is called This Is What We Call Home, and that's been ready to go since I was 18. And I look at it now and I'm saying, wow, this is where I was at 18. And the other it's called Gods and Fathers, and it's my my poetry and verse book. So that's on the way.
Lee-Ann, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.